They may even have your best interest at heart, and they may be trying to give you a pretty good deal, but for your scenario, maybe it doesn't fit or whatever, and you need to know that. You need to know what it is you're looking for. You need to have a minimal or a minimum number of equity that you want, a minimal amount of cash flow that you want, and know what those numbers are. And you want to tell your realtors this too. They need to know what to look for. If you just call them up and say, hey, send me a foreclosure property. What? What does that exactly look like? What does that mean? I used to have people call me all the time and say, hey, Chris, I want you to find me a foreclosure. Do you really want a foreclosure, or do you just want a good deal? Because there's a lot of good deals out there that aren't foreclosures. And on the other side of that coin, there's a lot of foreclosures that aren't good deals. Many of you probably already know that a lot of times when a foreclosure goes through, like a HUD foreclosure, for instance, it goes through a process where it has to have gone down through owner-occupants first. They get the first strike at these properties. We're kind of like second-class citizens as investors. By the time it gets to us, a lot of times those are picked over. Now, some of them are still good deals. They just maybe need so much renovation that an owner-occupant doesn't want to jack with it, but it still turns out to be something attractive to us. But again, you got to keep all that in mind and keep aware of that. Now, there's two different types of agents out there. Many of you, being already in this realm, probably already know this, but there's listing agents, and they're the ones that go out there and they basically spend all their marketing dollars to try to find people that want to sell their house. You know, that farming I'm talking about, they're blasting out the just listed cards and help me pick your neighbor cards, and so they're going out there and trying to find these people who want to sell their house. Then you've got the buyer's agents. These are the people that basically sit somebody down in their kitchen, you know, in their laptop or in their office, and they start searching through the MLS to try to find stuff that fits that buyer's criteria. And they'll put them in the car, they'll drive them around, try to find something that sticks, hopefully, right? Now, the listing agent is going to be the one that's going to go out there with the seller, and he's going to negotiate the actual commission that's going to be paid on that listing agreement. And hopefully they're going to earn the full commission if they go out there and find the buyer themselves. If they do the whole thing themselves, they get both sides of that. The buyer's agent, of course, is going to end up getting half of that commission if they're able to go out there and bring the buyer to the deal. And I'll talk about that in a second as well. And I used to be a listing agent, as I mentioned, and I used to go out there all the time, and people would always ask me, you know, hey, is that commission, is that negotiable? And I'll say, well, yeah, unfortunately, TREC does not let me say that my standard fee is this or my usual fee is that. I have to tell you, I charge 6%, but that is negotiable. And they would always ask me, well, that's great, you know, can we negotiate that? And I'd say, well, you know, I'd rather do it for 6. I said, but I can do it for 7 if you like. And I only had one person ever take me up on that, and it was a lady who wanted me to have open houses every weekend, and she wanted color flyers in the front and in the inside and everything else, and so she just wanted to pay a little extra for that extra marketing. But yeah, most people do stick with 6 after that. And I'm going to go through and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second as well. Now, we want to work with listing agents mostly. I usually say only, but I'll say mostly. And here's the reasons why. They know the seller. When you go to look at a property and you're talking to the agent that listed the property, they know that seller. They also know the seller's motivation. They know why they're selling the property. They may even have permission to tell you what the seller needs, what their bottom line is. So that's some pretty valuable information right there. They've seen the property. They've walked through the whole property, because when I was a listing agent, I would go out and take a listing from somebody. I would sit down with them at their kitchen table and say, tell me everything that's good and bad and ugly about this house. Then they also fill out what's called a seller's disclosure notice, and they have to, by law, disclose anything, any blemishes or anything that's wrong with the house. All right? So they know the property very, very well. They're able to get the, sorry, I keep blocking that. They're able to get the questions answered very, very quickly. There's no other person in the loop where you've got to go through this daisy chain of information. They get stuff answered very quickly. Because of that, they get the contracts signed much faster as well, because there's a perceived credibility there. Imagine this. I am the investor, because typically when you go out and you're going to buy somebody's house, people are pretty skeptical of investors, right? I wish that wasn't the case, but it is. Even though we don't operate, and I'm sure none of you do operate as ambulance chaser type investors, they still think we're all that way. But if we're working with the same agent that they're working with, there's kind of a transference of trust there that happens. Because if we're working with the same person they picked, we must be okay too. All right? So it makes things go very, very smoothly because of that. Now, I'm going to jump to the bottom one real quick. The main reason to use these agents to find these deals for you, they don't cost you a thing. Agents don't get paid until things close. So they're out there, they're busting their humps, they're finding these deals and they're sending them to you, they're giving you these leads, and it doesn't cost you a dime. Why would you not do that? Why would you go out there and do all this other stuff and spend your own money and your own time finding these deals when you've got people out there that do this for a career? All right. Now, talking about getting paid twice as much to sell, I'm going to go through and let's do an example real quick. Is it Svetlana?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a mouthful. Okay. I should have picked Tim or Joe or Bob or somebody. All right. Let's say Svetlana wants to go out there and she wants to sell her house. And she calls me. I'm the listing agent. I go out and I sit down at your kitchen table and I convince you that I can sell your house faster for more money. I'll do all the legwork and all the paperwork. All you have to do is pay me 6% when I get it done. She says, okay, great. We write up what's called a listing agreement. And we write it up for 6%. I've got two options. I can go back to my office and I can put all the information about Svetlana's house in the computer immediately to let the other 140,000 agents know about it. And what happens, like I said before, is the buyer's agent that sees that on the MLS is going to bring a buyer to that deal, and he's actually going to end up earning 3% for doing that. The other option that I have in Texas by law is I have up to 4 days before I have to put Svetlana's information in the database. So what I do is I call up somebody I know that I know is an investor. Let's say, your name, sir?
Jonathan.
Let's say Jonathan I know is an investor. He's worked with me before. He's bought properties from me before. I call Jonathan because I know he buys houses. I say, Jonathan, dude, this is in the area you live in. It's a number of bed, bath, garage, square feet, all the stuff that you like to invest in. You want to take a look at it? He says, well, yeah, send it over. I send it over to him. He ends up buying it directly from me. I'm now working with the seller and the buyer. How much of that commission do I now get? I get all of it. I get the full 6%. In the business, this is what we call double-siding a deal. And I can tell you, double-siding a deal is like crack to a real estate agent. I'm serious. They really, really like it. They're going to want to do it again. They're going to call you back. You're like a junkie dealer at this point, okay? And you want to put yourself in this position with as many agents as possible because these people are going to be feeding you the deals that are going to make you money. So you want them to think of you first. And if they get paid twice as much to work with you, I guarantee you your phone's going to ring, right? Now, some additional benefits of working with the listing agent. They have the best access to out-of-town sellers. And I talked about this earlier about how it's really tough to go out and find these dilapidated homes, these distressed houses that don't have anybody, they're abandoned, and then you got to find the owner. Well, now you have that. This thing is already, but they've contacted an agent, they've listed it, you now know how to get to that person, you can now buy that property. It is much, much easier this way. Also, if you go out there and you wait until something is listed with an agent and is put in the MLS, all the liens and everything else that's already been foreclosed on, all that stuff is taken care of. If you go out there and you buy a property directly from somebody, you need to make sure your title work is very, very good, whoever you're having do that. Because there could be some different liens on the property. Could be a mechanic's lien, could be a tax lien, could be something else, and that could come and bite you because you took over that property, that's now your lien. All right? So that's another reason I like to wait till these things are scrubbed and they're nice and clean and they've gone through the MLS. All right? The specialized niches, now this is where you can get those REO listings, for instance. Because a lot of agents, they work just with banks and they list all of their REO properties. So now you have access to those houses as well and they've been scrubbed. They're clean, they're safe. And if you're a new investor, again, I want to make sure that you go out there and you don't do something foolish or impetuous on your first deal and then throw your hands up and go, man, this stuff doesn't work. All right? I want to make sure you guys go out there and do safe deals. The third point here, and I used to minimize the font on this to the point where almost people couldn't read it, but it says that the listing agents can basically reduce their commission to make the deal work. If you're out there and you're doing a deal, and in order to make the deal good, you have to ask your listing agent to reduce their commission, you're in the wrong deal. Right? If it's that tight, that squeaky, you're in the wrong deal. Go find another deal that's got more meat on the bone. And again, you don't want to have to call these people and try to jimmy them down on their commission because they're not going to want to call you next time. Remember, we want to make them make twice as much money so we get called. So that point, I'll probably end up taking that out at some point, but it is a good point to make. Next thing, the listing agent is going to write up all the paperwork. They're going to do everything. I am actually a licensed realtor still, but when I buy a property, I don't write it up myself. I use other realtors to write up my deals. That's how much I hate paperwork. I hate work. I'm not lying, guys. I'm lazy. I do not like going out and doing this stuff. Because, I have better things to do with my time. And I just really hate paperwork. Now, the other thing they're going to do, again, is going to be a huge time saving for you. They're going to coordinate with the lender, the title company, the seller. They're going to coordinate with everybody. And a lot of times, if you've ever gone out and bought a property and had to go out there multiple times to meet up with the contractors, the inspector, and all those people, again, that's a lot of time that gets consumed. Especially if you're somebody that is working a full-time job. It is very tough to go out and do all that stuff that you need to do to get a deal from fruition to close. Next thing, I usually get some objections when I tell people we're going to work with realtors. A couple objections I get. People say, well, Chris, why would I go out there? Why would I use a realtor to find these deals for me? Why don't I just go out and find the deals myself, and then I can save that commission as possible profit for me? The problem with that, if your ability to grow your wealth or to grow your business is dependent on your own time schedule, you ain't going to make it. You have to have leverage. You got to have these people out there doing this stuff for you. Also, if you're out there trying to find these deals one or two at a time yourself, it doesn't even compare to having 20 real estate agents out there searching for these properties day and night for you and emailing them to you every morning in your inbox. Because then you get to look at all the stuff that's out there and you get to cherry pick the very best deal to put in your portfolio. That make sense? Okay. Now, past history, a lot of people say, well, Chris, you know what? I've worked with realtors before. They're lazy. They say discouraging things, and they never return phone calls. Well, it's not because they're realtors. It's because they're human. You've all heard of what's called Pareto's principle. It's also called the 80-20 rule. And what it says is that 80% of the results come from 20% of the people. So we can't presume that anybody we've worked with in the past is somebody we're going to work with now in this business anyway. We need to go out and find those 20%ers, those people that are actually out there doing the business and they're actually making things happen. They need to understand not only their business and be good at it, but they also need to understand what we do as well. All right? Now, you also don't want to go out there and one night stand your realtors. You want these to be long-term relationships. These people, again, are going to be feeding you deals that are going to make you and your family money. You want them to be around pretty much forever, right? Let me give you an example to illustrate this. Let's say that I'm going out and I'm looking for a long-term relationship, a spouse, a mate, and I pull up to a nightclub. I get out of the car. I don't hand the valet my keychain with the big Porsche logo on it. I give him the valet key. Because I want to walk into the nightclub, go up to the bar, there's two ladies sitting there, I want to drop my bling up on the bar. Now the first lady sitting there, she is a quality woman. She too is looking for a long-term relationship, a spouse, a mate, somebody to be with forever. Woman number two, and hopefully I don't offend anybody with this story, woman number two is up there, she's basically looking for somebody to pay her bills, all right? She's not looking for Mr. Right, she's looking for Mr. Right now. Well, if I go in there and I use this greed technique of saying, hey, I'm rich, I'm a stud, I got six-pack abs, and I drop my bling up there, and I use this greed technique to get them to work with me, which one of them am I going to attract? The short timer, right? I'm not going to get that long-term relationship. And if you go in and you use the techniques like the very first tape CD program I ever got, actually had a script in there that told you to go find these realtors and tell them, hey, I'm rich, I'm a stud, I'm going to buy 50 properties this year, I'm going to make you a ton of money, you'd be a fool not to work with me. They're going to see through that. You're going to get put on that S list, and believe me, this is a very small community. And everybody's going to know who you are. Nobody's going to want to work with you, and you're not going to get that long-term relationship that you need to get with these realtors. All right? So again, make sure you take care of your realtors as well. Now, we know who we're looking for. Now we've got to figure out, okay, how are we going to go out and find these people? There are several different ways you can go out and contact these realtors. You can go out there and face-to-face. And when I go through this, think about efficiency versus effectiveness in each one of these techniques. Face-to-face, that would be very effective. I mean, you're actually sitting down with these people and you're talking to them face-to-face and you're trying to get them to work with you. But it's not very efficient because if you're going to go out there and find 20 real estate agents that you actually want to work with, that you jive with and your personality meshes with and everything else, you're going to have to go out there and talk to probably a couple hundred of them. So it's not very effective. It's going to take a ton of time. Mailings. Realtors, they sort their mail the same way everybody else does, standing over the trash bin, right? So they're probably not going to see it. It's going to be a waste of money. It's a waste of time, and it's just not going to be very effective.